Good morning, everyone. Someone once said that I thought I could drown my sorrows with drinking, but I didn't realize that sorrow floats. This week's parsha, we're introduced to Noach, and Noach, we know, saved his family from the great flood. However, we don't find that he goes on to become one of our patriarchs, one of our Jewish leaders. And one of the reasons is the aftermath of the flood, where God tells him, go out of the ark. And the question is, why did he have to be told to go out of the ark? Wouldn't he naturally want to exit the ark after the flood was over? And the answer is that he didn't want to deal with the catastrophe of the destruction of the world. He didn't want to have to confront the feeling of guilt that he was a survivor and he didn't save the rest of humanity. He didn't want to have to deal with the sorrow of all the destruction. And so he tried to remain in his isolated cocoon in the ark. And God had to tell him, go out, it's time to rebuild. And what does he do? He plants a vineyard, he drinks from the wine, and he gets drunk. In other words, instead of facing the reality, he tries to drown his sorrow and his guilt with saying a lot of l'chaims. And God says, you're not up to the task of being the first Jew. Because to be a Jew means that when you're confronted with challenges, and sometimes the reality is devastating, like think of our generation after the Holocaust, we don't sit and wallow in the sorrow and in the guilt, but we start rebuilding. We take action. Because whatever the past is, we have to learn from the past, but we can't live in the past. We have to live in the present and plan for the future. And that's a Jewish approach. And like I said, in our generation, the Holocaust survivors demonstrated that to us better than anyone else. The reason we have thriving Jewish communities today is because they didn't sit and wallow in what was, but they immediately took action and started building for the future. There's a story told about two great rabbis in the Talmud. They were 3rd century rabbis, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shlakish. The Talmud says they went to the bathhouse in Tiberia. If you've ever been to the hot springs of Tiberia, it's a nice place. And the Talmud says 2,000 years ago, 1,800 years ago, they went to the bathhouse. As they were walking in, there was a beggar there saying, could you give me some charity? And they said to him, we're going into the bathhouse. When we come out, we'll give you something. They went in. It doesn't say how long they spent in there. Maybe an hour, maybe 2. They came out, and the beggar was lying on the floor dead. He had died from starvation. Now imagine if you would have been those rabbis. What would you feel? You would feel, oh my gosh, I killed this guy. I didn't give him tzedakah. I told him to wait till I get out. I caused his death. And you would be overwhelmed with feelings of guilt and sorrow and regret. And maybe you would go see a therapist to deal with those emotions. I don't know what you would do, but you would maybe become paralyzed. But listen what these rabbis said. They turned to each other and they said, we did not honor him during his lifetime. Let's at least honor him in his death. And let's arrange a proper burial for him. So they took him, they started to prepare his body for burial, which includes the mikveh. And as they were undressing him, underneath his clothing, they discovered a pouch of coins, 400 gold coins. He was really a rich man who was never not well. He was mentally ill. And he feigned poverty and he was begging for money. And really, they didn't kill him. He killed himself because of his mental illness. It had nothing to do with money. Had they given him the money, he still would have died because he had some mental issue. And they realized that they were not the cause of his death. And the powerful message of the story is that sometimes the best way to address feelings of regret and guilt is not to keep on being stuck in the past, but try to take action now. What you didn't do, you can't change. But there's still time left to do something now. And when you act in the moment, then sometimes you discover that you don't have anything to be guilty about in the first place. And that is the best remedy to undo, to remove the feelings of regret and guilt and sorrow. And so Parshas Noach teaches us, and that's why when we come to Avram Avinu, we learn from Avram Avinu, that to be a Jew means to remember the past, but not to live in the past.